If you're a fan of RPGs, tabletop variety specifically, I'm sure that you've sat at a table and had an experience that may have been not so desirable, or maybe it was funny. For me, when I think about one of the craziest experiences that I've really had, it would have to be in the seat of the DM. I have what a lot of people would consider to be some problematic rolling that happens sometimes at my table.
I was so avoiding.
When we brought up this topic to talk about, one of the first things that came to my mind was I could talk about this, but no, it's probably not a good thing to do.
Tell us, how did you deal with it?
So, to not get into too much specifics, I'm
What
not
do you mean
gonna
by problematic rolling? Like, give the audience an example of what you're talking about.
In the game Dungeons and Dragons, usually you have to roll dice in order to achieve your objectives. And part of the purpose of that is that there's an element of luck into everything you do. You stat your character out so that you try to tip the odds in your favor, but at the end of the day, it's still a dice roll. You could still roll a result that's non-optimal.
Which is awesome, by the way.
Some players are happy to handle things like that and understand that it's a part of the game. Some players have a very hard time handling things like that. And I distinctly remember that at one point there was a situation where it was a high stakes combat scenario. It was actually a PvP within the group, which is not always like the most recommended thing to do as a DM because situations like this can end up happening. So the players were in a contest against one another for something, and one of my players at the table actually kind of scooched back and began rolling his dice on the floor.
Wait, what? Hold on. I think I know the story you're talking about. I didn't get this piece of information. Rolling it on the floor.
Yes.
Like we're in an alleyway rolling dice for dollar bills on the floor.
Yes. And I kind of was taken aback as to why we were doing this, but I didn't really question it because, eccentric things can happen at a D&D table. However, the player next to him, who happened to be on the other end of the combat, got very agitated.
I wonder why.
Directly called him out and said, "You need to be rolling on the table," because the way that their interaction was going, some miraculous things were happening in that altercation where stat-wise and the way that both of the characters were designed, the way that combat interaction was going, it definitely should have gone in favor of the player who was not rolling under the table. But for some reason, the player who was rolling under the table was doing really well. And so
I don't know how.
Whether
That's
or not
crazy.
anything was actually happening, I don't know. But it was this very awkward moment for everyone because the other player ended up directly calling them out and saying, "You need to roll on the table," and then like staring directly at their dice. And it was just super uncomfortable. And I think my big takeaway from it was like PvP, like having the players play against each other is just like a no-go in general as much as possible in my DMing style.
So here's the thing with this, though, because I know the player in question, and I'm aware of the proclivity to do such nonsense. One thing that I have noticed is I feel like every die that they own has this property to it, and the only thing that I can... No, it's not what you think. The only property, the only way that I can think of to call it is Schrödinger's dice. Okay? So when it's not being observed, the dice can only roll
20.
a 16 or 17 or higher. But when it is being observed, the full range of 1 to 20 is available, but it only works. That observational phenomenon, like a kind of like a quantum thing, that quantum dice effect only takes place if there are at least 2 people watching that dice roll.
Well, I'll tell you another trick. Another trick is, even if you're not watching them, I don't know if I know this person, but even if you're not watching them, sometimes what you have to do is, what did you roll?
Yeah.
Then you take a look over and you do the math with them.
Or you can do something like it's almost, see, I'm getting a little too close to the fire here, but it's almost hilarious when you know exactly what their stats are and what their bonuses to things are, and then they roll something and it's just impossible for them to get the number that they say they got.
How did you get that?
Yeah, well, how did you get that? Like, oh wait, yeah, no, that I don't know how I got that math wrong. It's 5 lower than what I said it was. But honestly, but let's be honest.
This person sounds like a handful.
Dice fudging is a fact of TTRPG life, though. I will say that. There are times where I think anybody who's ever played the game, whether you're a player or you're behind the screen, where you've thrown a math rock and you went, damn. I think it happens more to DMs than anything else, especially if you're wanting to try and not kill your players or
That's why
have
you
something
get to
be
have
narratively interesting.
It's why you get to have a screen. If you do it too much, you're just a little word of advice. If you do it too much, your players will catch on.
Oh yeah,
but yeah, you can't fudge it all the time.
But if you just one shot
it's a superpower
that wizard, sometimes
that you have to use with. It's a superpower you have to use with caution and with intuition, because if you overemploy that, you're not playing the game anymore. You want the players to be happy, even if it means that your encounter just went from 3 rounds to 1.
My story comes from being on the player side. And this was when I first started playing any type of tabletop RPG. Yeah. So I was technically, I believe, playing Pathfinder, but it was like D&D 3.5. It was, I don't know.
Weird.
Yeah. So 3.5 and like Pathfinder are almost the exact same thing, from what I understand. And this was like when I first discovered TTRPGs were a thing, and I was like, this is super cool. It was also when I was kind of falling out of love with Magic the Gathering, because it was getting a little bit too... There's 7,000 different mechanics, and you have to spend $150 every other week so that you can stay on top of things.
Oh, you don't have to do that.
Yeah, well, the people that I was with made it very... made it seem that way. But in any case...
My buddy hoses those decks with $20 decks. Easy.
Sweet. In any case, it was kind of this like match that just happened. And I went to my friends. I'm like, hey, I just discovered this thing. It's called D&D, and we should do this, and da-da-da-da-da-da. And they were like, all right, cool. And one of my buddies at the time was like, oh, yeah, I know about that. I prefer Pathfinder because XYZ reason, and like I could put a game together for us. And I'm like, all right, cool. We should totally do that. And so we did, and we made characters, and I played, I believe the race, species, whatever you want to call it at this point, was a dragonkin. So it's not a dragonborn. It's like a dragonoid that can it's like a transformation, and they can fly and stuff like that. It was basically like a more powerful version of a dragonborn. I built my character too well.
Okay. Your first time in a TTRPG.
Yeah. Well, if you know me, you know that if there's a thing that I am interested in,
lots of research,
I jump into it hard. So, as you might suspect, if you also know me and my way around TTRPGs, I made them into a wizard.
Of course.
And yeah, and we were starting at I think 5th or 6th level. And the guy who made the game didn't consider what wizards gain access to at 5th or 6th level.
Okay.
So we had, in the first session, 4 or 5 combat encounters.
That is dense.
It is dense.
That's all right.
2 to possibly 3 of them, I know for a fact, were made up on the fly. Because there's this notion in older school TTRPGs where the game is built around you having a bunch of combat encounters as you go along. Yeah. So the first encounter was completely planned, and the last encounter was completely planned, and the middle 2 or 3 were just absolutely were not. Because the first one was supposed to be more intense than it was. It was 3 or 4 PCs, and it was just an army of kobolds and lizard men and stuff. So
nice.
Yeah, so
they're all
They're all positioned, and there's like I think he literally had like 30 like handmade printed tokens, and they were just like all spread around and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And I'm looking, and I'm measuring with my eyes, and I'm like, okay, cool. Just so happened to roll relatively high on initiatives, where I'm like one of the first people to go. And I go, cool. I'm going to put a fireball right there. Just hits like 28 out of the 30 combatants. And for most of them, even if they didn't make the save, or if they did make the save, they still die.
Yep.
So
those are all low health.
With a single spell, I wiped out his like entire encounter. And I was having fun in the moment, but at the moment I did it, he was like, cool. Just like put his hand down and swiped them off the table. And swiped them off the table, and I'm like,
that one's kind of on him though.
Yep,
it is on him. But the problem then was the slog that ensued, and it didn't feel good because it was pretty obvious that this was like done in such a way that it made it so that it was purposely more difficult because of the fact that I like fireballed the entire first encounter. So that's kind of the story there. So I kind of guess it harkens back to the, you want your players to feel good about themselves when they do stuff like that. But there's also like this balancing aspect that needs to happen. Like, yeah, cool. I fireballed your entire team of people, but then you're going to throw like 2 or 3 more encounters on top of that to basically make it so like we're almost dead by the time we get to the last one. Like that's not fun anymore. So it's like finding a balance.
Maybe instead of doing that, what he could have done, if I were in his shoes, is you said there was like one last encounter, right? A final encounter or something?
Yeah.
Throw a resistance to fire on just the enemies there.
Yeah.
Just throw it on them.
Yeah.
Players won't know because it's pre-combat.
Right. Give something that makes that encounter a little bit harder. I can even see like throwing in another encounter with like a mini boss. So like you have to use up more of your resources, but it was more like mobs. I'm going to throw a lot of stuff at you and hope you maybe die.
Lots of small enemies,
say,
they die in one hit.
It's not a failed encounter if you burned an instance of fireball. You burned an instance of fireball.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, the DM also controls how much the party rests, and they control...
There was none. So that's the thing.
Yeah, he got into the, it's me versus the players, which can happen when you put a lot of planning into something and then it gets squished.
Yeah.
It's very easy to get into that mindset, and you have to fight it and just say, you know what? It's actually awesome that it worked out for them this way. I didn't plan it that way, so I know how to adjust moving forward. But there are plenty of ways to increase the difficulty while still allowing that victory to be celebrated. That you want it to be impactful. It's not just you playing the game, it's everybody else. And for everybody else, wiping out that entire encounter of kobolds with one spell cast probably felt really awesome.
It did.
So, yeah.
And then now that I have some years of doing this under my belt, like I can completely see why someone might be a little frustrated with that. But then
why did you put them all next to each other?
Well, he didn't put them all. Well, I might have been exaggerating the number of tokens.
They were within a certain distance of one another.
That is like fireball is one of the things you kind of just plan for.
Sure, yeah. But then again,
as one of like the, if he was like just coming back or new, I totally get it. I don't want to put like this immense weight on the DM, like, you're a terrible DM.
I'm kind of unsure how much experience he had running the game, so that might have been what it was. But in any case, like, it's just, I hold no enmity. It's just like, oh yeah, that's a thing that has happened in the past. And now when I run into those types of situations as a DM, I try to kind of like exuberate that, like, yes, you do this epic, amazing thing and their face melts and blah, blah, blah. Or like all the other creatures are now terrified and they just run away, because you just turned, half of their family to ash or whatever.
And the implications of that. One of the creatures gets away. If it's a sentient, conscious creature, it communicates to everybody else, hey, this just happened to everybody.
Watch out for this guy.
Them anymore.
Well, or let's set some traps. We're kobolds, after all. For those of you who don't know, kobolds are very tricky creatures that thrive in environments where they can set traps and manipulate the battlefield. So it would make sense for a bunch of kobolds to get together and say, okay, well, half of us just got fireballed in that cavern back over there, so let's rig this one so that the ceiling is going to collapse, and things like that to try and, let the enemies learn. But of course, these are things that a more practiced DM might pick up and say, like, okay, well, that's how I'm going to adjust for that. Or, okay, great, I burned an instance of fireball. I'm going to throw 2 more encounters, give them some more opportunities to burn some stuff before we get to the big fight for this little segment we're in, But you shouldn't turn around and be like, okay, now what's going to happen is that wizard is never doing anything again. They are going to be miserable the rest of this combat. Everything is completely immune to fire damage, and
everything has
spell ignoring mantles and all these other things, and
everybody has the shells on their back.
Anti-magic barrier. The city's under the effects of silence all the time.
Right. And that's easy. It's really easy to fall into something like that when your plans get thwarted. And you just have to remember that, it's not worth getting frustrated over. If you spent a lot of time planning that encounter, you can still feel like the encounter meant something. Because if the players enjoyed it, that's the whole point. So in that instance, no matter what it was supposed to go like, the fact that the enjoyment came from all that getting fireballed in one blow, you achieved your goal. You're having a good session, and that's so easy to forget.
You should also keep in mind you are also participating in this activity. You should also be getting some amount of joy out of DMing it yourself. Keep that in mind. So just thought I'd throw it out there.
Speaking of throwing things out there, what do you have to throw into the story pool?
So I also have a similar first time playing D&D-esque story that also involves a fireball. And this turned out very bad. So it was my first time playing. I was playing with my group of friends from high school, and it was my buddy's first time DMing. So we're all first-time players. He was really into the idea of D&D. He sold it to us. We all started playing. We're in this cave. I was playing, of course, because I'm me, I was playing a tiefling wild magic sorcerer. My very first character I ever built. Now, there were definitely homebrewed rules, which is interesting because because I wanted to be super chaotic, my DM was like, okay, you're going to roll on the wild magic table every spell. So that was happening. And for those of you who don't know, the wild magic table is just a table full of 20 different things. Either most of them are fine or do nothing, and then a couple of them are bad, a couple of them are good.
So for every spell, the game so much. Rolling on the wild magic table every spell. That's crazy.
Well, we had the table in front of us the whole time, so it actually wasn't too terrible. We found a way where it was I was rolling whatever spell, and then also I was rolling the die for the wild magic at the same time. Well, it all came to a head. We got into this big giant troll fight where we managed to come out successful. We're in a cave with this troll, so we're leaving the cave. We were ambushed by something. I freaked out. So I cast a spell. I don't remember the effects of that spell, but I rolled some other thing, and it allowed me to cast a fireball, essentially. My DM took that, and he was like, well, it's wild magic, so it's going to shoot in a random direction. So it fired upwards. And the way he played it is, this might have been the game where the words rocks fall came from, because the cave collapsed inwards and killed half the party.
Oh my god.
There were 2 survivors. So, I mean, everyone was new. We were laughing our asses off. I guess we didn't really care too much. So that was good. It was good that we had that reaction. But I can see, looking back, that could definitely, if that were to happen to me now, that would suck. That would suck so bad. Especially thinking back to my latest sorcerer who kind of took up that wild magic role, and I didn't play much of him, but I love the character. If that had happened to him, my god. Part of it was my fault, though, because I was being super erratic with my spell casts. I don't think I needed to cast whatever spell. I just really wanted to see wild magic in the moment. And it ended up killing half the party, so I was included in that death. But yeah, it was a crazy, crazy game full of crazy shenanigans.
It depends on the play group. If you have a group of all people who are new to playing, I think that's probably an okay basis for something like that to happen.
Yeah, I wouldn't say we learned anything from it. I learned later on that that's probably not good.
Well, the DM made some choices. I mean, the fireball shooting straight up, if you're talking about a fireball exploding against rock surface, like, does the cave really have to collapse at that point? There's a lot of questions there.
Yeah. Are you accounting for volume when casting fireball? Because that was apparently a thing in like first or second edition, where like you had to do legit math to calculate the volume of a room and see if any of the fireball like blows back from where you're casting it from. So if you throw a fireball into like a 10 by 10 room down a hallway, it's gonna come back and hit you.
I think we were playing 4th edition, I think, because I don't think 5th was out, or we were playing 5th and it just came out. One or the other.
That also harkens to the phrase of, I don't care how big the room is, or I didn't ask how big the room is. I cast fireball.
The worst part is, I don't think I had access to fireball at the time. So, like, there were lots of shenanigans going on. I promise you there were lots. Oh, I was also wild magicking off of my cantrips.
Gee.
Yeah, dude, I'm telling you there were lots of shenanigans going on.
Yeah, that's not, like, that's even, like...
I actually assumed you were wild magic pooling off your cantrips.
Oh, really? No, you can't.
In the rules is written, you're not supposed to do... It's only leveled spells that do that.
But he said he loved the subclass so much.
Considering the context of the game, I was under the assumption that you were doing it off cantrips, too.
Yeah, I think we were pretty low level, and like, the major boss was a troll for a session, so I don't know. Who knows? It was definitely an experience, and one that probably that entire play group will remember.
Yeah, definitely. Well, those are some fun and interesting stories related to D&D. We're gonna
have the dungeon dudes on. I don't know.
Or dungeon dads.
That went right over his head.
No, I know that one.
Dungeon dads?
Yeah.
That's a real podcast.
Yeah, Dungeon
I
Dads.
didn't know that.
Yeah, Dungeons and Daddies.
That went right over my head.
It did. Yeah.
Dungeon Dads, hit us up.
I too am a father who also is somebody who traverses dungeons.
Well, you know what? If any of you have a story, is this what you were going to say?
Yes.
I won't steal it. Go ahead.
No, you're already doing it. Do it.
No. You do it.
No, you do it. Okay.
To Humor Highwire, guys.
If any of you guys out there, or gals, or whatever you identify as, have interesting or funny or hot takes when it comes to TTRPGs, it doesn't have to be D&D, any crazy stories that you want us to know about, maybe we can shout them out here on the next time we do Table Talk. Let us know. Comment, send us a DM, email us. Everything's in the show notes, socials, all that fun, happy stuff. Yeah, like, subscribe, follow, retweet. No, repost. I don't know.
Yeah, repost.
You can retweet our tweets. That's cool too.
Yeah, but they're not tweets anymore.
That's reposting.
Yeah,
Okay.
because people make smart choices.
You can quote us too.
You can quote us, just don't quote us out of context.
Quote post us.
Quote us out of context. I think that's funny.
Yeah. Talk about Ian's healthcare stance. We all know it.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed the episode. It's that.
Welcome to Humor Highwire.
Bye.